Hello, friends. Greg Braden here. You have not seen me much live on social media. You haven't seen a lot of posts from me for most of this year. And the reason for that is because I did something this year that I have never done in the past. I took almost 7 months of this year off, with the exception of a few commitments for live events. I took 7 months off to write a new book because I wanted to write this book in a way that I've never written a book in the past. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. You know, in the past, I've written the books in airport lounges, on airplanes, in hotel rooms, and it works, and I'm happy to do it that way. But this is a very, very special book. So first, I'm going to begin. Now I see people coming on. I want to thank everyone for taking a moment to click the link that's bringing us together today. I know we all have very full lives. I will be very honoring of your time. I'll be brief, I'll be concise, but I want you to know that I have written a new book, and that's what I want to talk to you about right now. You know, it's no secret that our world is in chaos, and I know it means different things to different people, but I wanted this book to be relevant to you, to me, because I'm in this with you. We're in this together. I want it to be relevant for what we're seeing every day in our lives rather than an esoteric compilation of cool and interesting information that sometimes is hard to apply in our everyday lives. That's why I took the time, 7 months, to write this book. And it is published by Hay House. And I'm saying that now because I want to give a shout out and my deep gratitude to Hay House because they allowed me to address topics that we've never addressed before and to use my words. There is very little editing that happened once this book was written. They allowed me to use my words to say to you what I feel in my heart is in our world right now, what's happening in our world, what it means in our lives, and how we can move through this window of time in a healthy way, making healthy choices for ourselves and our families. You know, it's been said that knowledge is power. And when we understand, when we look at the big picture and we understand what's happening in the world, then we have choices. And the knowledge allows us to make healthy choices for ourselves, for our children, for our families, for our communities, for our society, for our nation, and for our planet. And we're all in this together. So why did I write this book? There are two parallel themes in Pure Human. Number one, the best minds of our time are telling us that unless we change our thinking and unless we change the path that we're on right now, within about 5 years, around 2030 is the year they're looking at, there will be very, very few pure humans remaining on our planet today. When you talk to someone in the grocery store, on the street, you'll be talking to some form of a hybrid human and machine. You know, it's no secret as well that there is a move to replace our biology with technology, computer chips in the brain, chemicals in the blood, sensors, RFID chips, artificial intelligence. That's no secret. The experts are telling us that we very probably are the last generation, you and I are the last generation of pure humans that will walk this earth unless we make a choice in our lives. That's one theme in the book. I want you to understand that the policies are already being written right now. The laws are already being enacted, and the goals are already in place. Within the next 5 years, between now and 2030, the changes that we see in our lives and our world are going to be unlike anything that we've ever seen in our past, in our lifetimes, in some respects in the history of our civilization. And I want to tell you why that is. The other part of the book, there are two simultaneous themes. The second part is that our humanness is so poorly understood, we are on the precipice. We're about to give away our humanness to the technology before we even know what it fully means to be human. In this book, I'm sharing with you new discoveries, new science, not technical. It's not a technical book. It was written for everyone from homemakers and students to engineers to truck drivers to scientists to scholars, because we're all in this together. The new discoveries are telling us that our humanness meets and in many cases exceeds the capacity of the technology that is proposed to replace our bodies, replace our humanness. I'm going to talk to you about that in just a moment. So let's go back. These two parallel themes, the theme of change in our world and the encouragement to give away our humanness to technology. They are deeply related and they're deeply reflected in the events that are playing out in the world today. I've had people come to me when I am at home in my little rural community here in northern New Mexico, and I go to the grocery store co-op, and people come up to me and they just feel that the world is falling apart at the seams for no apparent reason, that there are these spontaneous changes that are happening, whether it's climate change or social change or the wars in Europe or the wars in the Middle East. All the things are going on. They say, Greg, isn't it interesting that these are all happening at the same time? Well, it is interesting, and it is not a coincidence, and it is not a synchronicity. It is by design. There is a concerted effort to remake this world and to do it within the next 5 years in ways that we have never seen before. Now, of course, we have seen humans impact the world around us. We've always done that. We've had the ability to impact our ecosystems, clear-cut forests, pull fossil fuels out of the ground and pollute water sources. And, we've always done that. But here's what makes right now so different. Here's why I felt the urgency. And there is a sense of urgency, a joyous urgency in sharing this information. Joyous in the sense that the new discoveries are so joyous and that we have time to preserve our humanness. And the urgency is that if we're going to do it, now is the time to do it. We don't have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years or another generation. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen in the next 5 years or so. So we have always had the ability to change the world around us. Here is what makes now so very different. For the first time, we have the technology and we also have the desire to change the world within us, to change our very humanness, to change the biology, to change the genetics, to change the DNA, to change the cellular structure and the function of our bodies in ways that reflect the ideas and the agendas of other people. We've never had that before. And here's the catch. Once we make those kinds of changes, once we engineer the genetics of the human body, once we do that, we can never go back to what we were in the past. It's not like you can make a genetic change and say, let's check this out. If it doesn't work, say, whoops, it didn't work. Let's go back to where we were. You can't do that because of the way we're designed. Once we embrace these changes, whether it's artificial intelligence or chemicals in the blood or the replacement of entire systems within the body, once we do that, our body morphs and it adapts to that new change. We become different than we were before that change. That's why we can't go back to the change. We evolve in a sense, but this is not natural evolution. This is an artificial form of evolution. In my opinion, it's not in our best interest. It's not in the interest of our children. And very few people are saying that. You and I are the product of multiple generations where we have been led to believe that we are powerless victims of a world that we have no control over. We have been led, and our young people today, in school, today, while we're having this conversation, they're in classrooms, and they're being told that our humanness is a flawed form of life, F-L-A-W-E-D, flawed form of life, that we need something outside of us to compete in the world and be successful in business and be successful in whatever endeavors that we choose to put our time, energy, and life into. Among the flaws that are identified are human emotion. They say that human emotion clouds our ability to think clearly and make good decisions. And maybe in some cases that's true, but it's also because of human emotion that we have the uniquely human capacities of sympathy and empathy and compassion. These are all functions of a part of us. Now, I'm going to use a word that means different things to different people. And let me define the word, and then let me tell you why it's so important in our lives. When we talk about our humanness, when we talk about love, We talk about healing. We talk about forgiveness. We talk about imagination, creativity, innovation, intuition. All of these are expressions of a part of us that is rarely spoken about in the scientific community. The word that describes these is divinity. Now, I know for some people, divinity can have a charge. Some people link it to religion, and I can see why, because there are schools of divinity that make that connection, and they do good work and they do good things. But I want you to know that the contemporary definition of divinity, listen to this. Listen to this definition. If you haven't heard it, you're going to love it. The contemporary definition of divinity is the ability to transcend perceived limitations. And that's it. Transcend means to become more than, not to fight with equal force, but to triumph, to become more than the challenges that life brings to our doorstep. Perceived limitations, check this out. Perceived limitations are our perceptions, just what it says. They may not even be real. The limitations that we've placed upon ourselves, the limitations that we use to define our lives and our livelihoods and where we put our life energy, what we think we're capable of, those limitations may not even be ours. They can come from our family early in life. They can come from our culture, our society. They can come from our friends. They can come from scientific textbooks. They can come from religion. The point is that there's a part of us that is rarely acknowledged in the scientific community. That's changing, and I talk about that in the book. The experiments that are now showing us, leading scientists to understand what this mysterious force in our bodies is really all about, our divinity, the ability to transcend perceived limitations. All right? That ability is only possible through the use of our natural biology, our natural DNA, cell membranes, the receptors on cell membranes, all of these function. You can think of them literally as a biological antenna that tune us to information incoming all the time. And this is not hocus pocus. It's not science fiction. The best science in the modern world is now beginning to see the human body rather than the sticky, gooey, wet stuff inside of cells that we've been conditioned to think about. They're beginning to look at the human body from an IT perspective, information technology. And they're realizing that the cells of our bodies function as tiny miniature nanocircuits. And every cell is a transistor, it's a resistor, it's a capacitor. Every cell receives photons of information, light coming in from the universe. That light is information that we decode in our bodies, and we emit photons. We're sending information back. Every cell in our body stores and releases that light. Every cell in our body stores information in our genetic code for every successful transaction in our species from the first day that the first of our kind walked this earth. All of those things are happening right now. They're looking at it from an IT perspective. And here's the thing. It is only through our natural biology that we can access our divinity. Only through our natural biology that we can access love, understanding, forgiveness, compassion. It's where our healing begins. It's where our imagination, our creativity, and innovation begin. So as we are led and encouraged to replace our biology with synthetics, with artificial intelligence, chemicals in the blood, synthetic systems within us, RFID chips, sensors under the skin, nanobots running through our systems, as we do that, what is happening is we are severing our relationship to our divinity. And I talk about this in the book. The reason that this is being encouraged is because divinity is where you find your power, and divinity is where I find my power. And when we embrace our power, we have the ability to transcend the fear that we find in our lives. Our world is going to change. We're not going to stop the change necessarily, but it's how we feel and how we respond to that change and what the changes in the world do to us. What do we become in the presence of the change? So we are now on the precipice, and we're being encouraged through marketing, through very sophisticated marketing, really sexy sexy YouTube ads. I mean, I know what's happening and I'm still in awe at how amazing these ads are to accept this technology, this AI, these computer chips into our bodies. What I want you to know, and I'm not saying don't do it, I want you to know that the technology that you're being encouraged to embrace into your body already does those things. All of the technology in the world around us mimics what we already do in the cells of our body. Here's the kicker: we do it better. We do it better. The computer chips that our young people are being taught to worship as our saviors. Those computer chips, are they fast? Absolutely. Are they efficient? Absolutely. But here's the thing. Those chips will always be limited by the physics of the stuff they're made of. If it's a silicon chip, the information can only travel between those silicon atoms at a certain speed within a certain amount of time. They are, when we talk about scalability, how far can we scale the computer chip? There is a finite limit to the scalability of a computer chip. Now, you take a look at a human neuron. What is the scalability of a human neuron? I'm going to tell you the honest truth. Scientists do not know. And here's the reason, and this is the good news, and this is what's so exciting. Every time they push a human neuron to what they believe is a limit, we do what humans do. We morph and we adapt to that new condition, and in that adaptation, we open the door to a whole new vista of possibilities for that neuron, and it happens again and again and again. What is the scalability of a human neuron? The truth is, we are unlimited. We don't know what that limit is. If there is a limit, because we're designed to embrace that change and to shift and to morph into new versions of ourselves. And that's just the neurons. The same thing is true for the systems of your body, for the cell membranes of your body, for the DNA in your body. The scientists are telling us right now, this is a very different way of thinking, but you and I are a highly advanced, technologically sophisticated, soft technology. Now, what's that mean? We're not the hard technology of computer chips and wires and chemicals. We're the soft technology of neurons, DNA, cell membranes, moving ion potentials across cell walls, and we're so sophisticated that you don't have to know any of that. The beauty of a complex, well-designed system is that you don't have to know what happens behind the scenes to benefit from that system. The more complex the system, the simpler the user interface. So what is the user interface to our pure humanness? Well, you already know. It's the subject of our most ancient and cherished spiritual traditions: thought, feeling, emotion, breath, focus, nutrition, movement. That's our user interface. And it only works with our natural, pure humanness. When we give our biology away to technology, we lose the ability to use that interface. We lose the ability to access emotion. We lose sympathy, empathy, compassion. We lose the ability to love and the access to deep intuition. I don't know about you, I cherish those things in my life. I cherish those things in my human family. It's what sets us apart from all other forms of life. I wrote this book with a sense of urgency because in the next 5 years, you are experiencing the policies, the laws, the social conditioning, the pressure to give your humanness away, to compromise the gift of your body in exchange for the efficiency of technology. And I want you to know that you have a choice. I want you to know why it's a real choice. And I want you to know that we're only beginning to understand what it means to be human. That's the beauty. We're about to give our humanness away before we even know what it means to be fully human in this world. I think we're worth preserving. I believe that we are worth preserving. Within us, there's something that is so ancient and so rare and so precious and so beautiful and so powerful that there are forces on this earth and organizations and individuals that will go to any length to veil our power, our divinity from us. They create distractions in the world around us. Don't think that the chaos of the world out there is separate from what I'm talking to you about right now. Because the wars the breakdown in society, the social breakdown, all of the complexities that we're seeing that are breaking the social bonds. Our social bonds are being broken between the rich and the poor, between men and women, blacks and whites, Christians, Muslims, Jews and Muslims, adults and children, the gender conversation. All these things are really important. We need to talk about them. They're being weaponized to distract us from this fundamental shift to transition our humanness to technology, to transition our biology to something that a hybrid version of what we are. Now, I've had conversations with scientists say, oh, this is the next step in our evolution. This is not the next step in a natural evolution. And I'm going to say to you right now, it's not good for us. These changes are not good for we humans. And you say, well, who are they good for? That opens the door to a whole conversation. They're not good for us. It's not good to give away your ability to love, to think critically, to emote, to feel, to forgive. It's not good for you to give away your ability for natural healing. Those things are not good for you. They're all facets of your divinity. Remember the definition, the ability to transcend perceived limitations. That's all it is, until we read something else into it. So part of this book, Two Parallel Themes, I'm identifying the facts of your divinity, how divinity relates to biology. We access our divinity through our bodies. And you know, if you are biblically inclined, even if you're not a religious person, almost universally, biblical texts and other ancient traditions have always called our bodies the temple. And they call it the temple because it is a metaphor saying that we house something precious within our bodies. You know, I've spent a lot of time, some of you have traveled with me to some of the most ancient and remote and isolated and mystical places remaining in the world today. And when there are temples there, we have experienced the way the temples are built. There are outer temples and inner temples. And in the innermost portion of every ancient temple, there is a place called the Holy of Holies where the most sacred information is stored. All right? That's in the physical temples in the world around us. And we think of our body as a temple. We have not one Holy of Holies, but we have 50 trillion because every cell has a nucleus containing the DNA that is the most precious information that allows us to love one another, to hold one another and comfort one another, and to understand and listen and forgive, to innovate and solve our problems, to do what humans are made to do in the absence of the fear. Divinity frees you from your fear. When you are veiled from your divinity, you become more vulnerable to fear and more vulnerable to the ideas and the agendas of other people. And that's why in the next 5 years, you're going to see an unprecedented effort to remake the world around us, which I said has happened before, but now to remake the world within us. We're going to be encouraged to give away our humanness, and I want you to know what it is that you're giving away before you give it away. So that's what Pure Human is all about. Now, there's another part of the book that describes all the good news, the new discoveries that are, and these are peer-reviewed discoveries that are just not making it into the mainstream, telling us how powerful we are, telling us that our natural biology competes, meets, and in many cases exceeds the capacity of the technology. Now, I'm just going to give you an example. One example. So our young people especially, are being conditioned to believe computer chip is the savior. You know, everything is all about computers and AI. Well, scientists at the Salk Institute did an experiment, and they equated, well, what they did was they compared a human brain to a microprocessor. And they did that by equating the synapse between the neurons in the brain to the transistors in the processors. And interestingly, there is about the same number of synapses in an average human brain as there are transistors on a typical computer chip, microprocessor. So then they began to look at the speeds with which this process can happen. And I've got all the details in the book. I won't share that with you now. I don't want to use your precious time to understand that, but I want you to know at the end of the experiment, what they found is that the human brain is 100-fold faster and more efficient than the best chips that we've got today. All right. That is counter to the narrative that we're being led to embrace. We're being led to believe that those computers, man, that's the answer to everything. I'm a high tech guy. I worked in the tech industry from 1979 to the early 1990s in some of the most advanced technology during the Cold War years. Star Wars Defense Initiative, for example, SDI, advanced lasers, advanced communications, advanced radar. I mean, this stuff, and that was back then. I can only imagine where it is now. But here's why I'm saying this to you. As advanced as all those things are, never did I at that time, or have I yet, to see any technology built in the world around us that doesn't mirror, doesn't mimic what we already do in our bodies, but we do it better. We are a highly advanced, technologically sophisticated, soft technology. And we're only beginning to understand what that means. So the second parallel theme in this book, our divinity and why it's important, is one of those themes. The parallel theme is the new discoveries of what our potential is for healing in our bodies. Every organ in the human body is now documented with the ability to heal, to stop the damage that's incurred, to reverse the damage, and to heal that damage. Even the organs and systems we were told could not. Now I'm talking about pancreatic tissue. I'm talking about spinal cord tissue, heart tissue, brain tissue, broken immune systems. They all have the ability, and they're all documented with the ability to stop the damage that has occurred, to heal and repair, and then to reverse that, to rejuvenate. Here's the key. The key is they have to be given the proper environment for that to happen. Our bodies want to heal. We have to be given the proper environment. Now, when you hear environment, you think, okay, the air that you breathe, the water that you drink, food that you eat, yes, those are all important. You may be surprised, the most potent environment, the most powerful environment, the one that has the greatest ability to heal is the emotional environment that we create within our bodies. Our perceptions of how we feel about the world around us. Not necessarily what's actually happening, but how we feel about what it is that's happening. And the good news is we have the ability to self-regulate those perceptions. And we've talked about that, and I work with dear friends and colleagues who do a beautiful job of talking about that. But I want you to know that the science, the new discoveries, are now supporting everything that we're talking about and more by looking at the human body from an IT perspective, information technology, rather than biology, rather than the soft, sticky, gooey stuff inside of the cells. At the beginning of the 20th century, cells were still viewed as little sacks of salt water, little sacks of saline with some stuff floating around inside. It wasn't that long ago. All right. Now, IT perspective, engineers are looking at the human body as an advanced technology. And from that perspective, they're opening the door to deep truths about who we are and what we can do. And once we embrace those, the urgency for the external technology diminishes. Once you begin to understand who and what you are, what your capabilities are, what your divinity allows for you, and once you embrace your divinity, then you find less need for the external technology. I'm not saying we won't use it, but you find less need for that. There's a third part of this book, chapter 7, and if you want to go directly to chapter 7, you can check it out very, very quickly. Chapter 7, I'm identifying the forces, the organizations that are moving us in a direction that is counter-human, counterproductive to our humanness. And I'm also identifying the techniques of indoctrination that are used through the media. Social media, media silos, mainstream media, the narratives that are being used to entice us to make the choices from within that lead us in a direction that steals from us the very thing that we cherish, and that is our humanness. Once you recognize the tactics, once you recognize the marketing tactics, then you can identify them and make healthy choices for you and your family. And it's more than just unplugging from social media. I mean, of course, turn off the computers, that's all good. You have still been left with the lingering sense of the indoctrination that you and I, we're in this together. We've all gone through this. We're going through it together. We are all casualties of a form of information that is leading us to believe and to make choices that actually steal from us the very things that we cherish the most. And I want you to have the opportunity to be aware of how that unfolds in your life so that you can recognize it, not be angry, not be hateful, not be vengeful, and want retribution, but recognize it and discern that these are not things that you choose to put your life energy into. They're not things that you choose to expose your children to. And I've devoted an entire chapter. Hay House encouraged me and allowed me, and very, very little editing. And this is very different for this kind of book. But I want you to have this. All right, the title of the book, Pure Human, The Hidden Truth of Our Divinity. Now you know why that's important. Power. Divinity is the power that frees us from fear and allows us to love fearlessly and forgive and embrace the deep truth of our humanness. That's our power. Our destiny is the last part of that subtitle. We were never meant to hurt the way that we're hurting in this world right now. And I am surrounded by people who are really having a tough time in their world. We know people that have taken their own lives. They've left this world because they feel there is no other choice. We were never meant to live in this kind of fear. Our bodies can adapt to it, but it's not what we were optimized to experience. We were never meant to suffer the way that we were suffering. And I'm hesitating here because I'm going to go ahead and just use a quote. I'm a scholar, I'm a student of the ancient and the Gnostic traditions, some of the most ancient writings for the modern world that are the foundation of our most cherished spiritual and religious texts. One of the things that I read years ago that stayed with me till this very day is the Gnostics remind us that the only difference between the angels in the heavens and the angels that walk this earth is that the angels in the heavens remember that they are angels. I want you to think about that. It implies that we are an angelic presence walking this earth that have forgotten who we are, forgotten our power, forgotten our divinity. It has nothing to do with religion. It has a lot to do with life. And there are different ways to interpret that. We are limited by the words, the language, but I think you know what I'm saying to you here because you're my brothers and sisters. You're my global family. I love you and I love this world, and that's why I've written this book, because there's something happening now that has never happened in our lifetimes. It's never happened in the history of Western civilization. The effort to steal our divinity, to lower the resistance to changing the world. There's so much that I want to share with you about this book. And I do feel a sense of urgency, again, a joyous urgency. We've got all the time we need to preserve our humanness, and now is the time to make the choices to preserve our humanness. Ray Kurzweil, the visionary, he is a technical director at Google, developing a lot of the AI and the software. He says that by the 2030s, there will be no more pure humans. He says by the year 2045, we will all be part of what's called the Internet of all things. We will be digitally entangled into this global web of information that is being constructed right now, unless something changes in our lives. It's up to you if you think that's a good thing or a bad thing. Some people embrace that change, but I want you to be aware that when you embrace those kinds of changes, you give away the very essence of what it means to be a member of your species. You give away the very essence of your humanness, your ability for empathy, sympathy, compassion, forgiveness, love, self-healing, self-regulation of the human body, deep intuition, creativity, imagination, innovation. All of those are the price that we're being asked to pay to embrace technology into our bodies so that we have a more efficient world around us. Is it worth the price? That is a decision that you have to make in your lives. But I think it comes down to something much simpler. It comes down to love. And this is what I want to leave you with today. It all comes down to love. I love this planet. I love the people of this world. I love you for your courage in making the choice to bring the light and the love into this world that you have done in all the ways that you have done it. And to stay with it, because it's not easy. It's not easy, but we're worth it. Our humanness is worth it. Our children's world is worth it. Our species is worth it. And this isn't something we're talking about 20 years in the future. It's today, because the policies are being written, the laws are already being enacted. It comes down to love. The question is simply this: do we love ourselves enough? And I'm going to make this personal. Do you love yourself enough to embrace your own humanness, to embrace your own divinity, and to accept the responsibility for what it means to have the power of that divinity on this earth? Do you love yourself enough? The choices you make in your life are the answer to that question. You don't have to answer me. It's the choices you make in your life. Pure Human is a guidebook, and it will help you to make healthy choices. It will help you to recognize when there are forces and powers that are pulling you from your humanness and encouraging you to give away the very essence of what it means to be human and divine in this world. That's why I'm inviting you to check out this book. Check out the book, Pure Human. Thank you for sharing a little bit of your day with me today. Once again, pre-order purehumanbook.com. And if you haven't done so already, write the words Pure Human in the comment section for a 5-book giveaway. I love you all. Thank you so very much for your love and support. You will be seeing more of me on social media now that the book is written. And thanks for hanging in there with me while I took the time to write. I hope you enjoy this book just as much as I've enjoyed researching it, pulling this information together, and offering it to you in the way that I am. Love you all. Take good care. I look forward to our next.
So let me just share, Gregg, Bruce, and Lynn have helped hundreds of thousands of people all over the world to harness the fullness of their human capacities so they may evolve into their peak human potential. This is the first time they've collaborated on a program such as this. Now, let's talk to Gregg, Bruce, and Lynn about the exciting topics we'll be exploring with them today. And Gregg, to get us started, do you want to talk a little bit about the concept of transhumanism that's blurring the line between human and machine and what it means for us as evolving humans?
It's a big topic, Steve, and I think it's a perfect place to begin. You know, it's been said that the best way to hide something is to keep it in plain sight. And I think this conversation could not be a better, more beautiful demonstration of that principle. There is a movement that actually began early in the 20th century to fundamentally change the way the human body, the way our biology is presented in the world. It is based upon a false assumption. So I'm just going to share with you this false assumption. The assumption is that we are flawed as a carbon-based form of life, that humans are flawed by their nature. And because we are flawed, that we need something outside of us to be successful in life, successful in the world, and to be healthy in our bodies. And that something is technology. We're being taught that we are victims of circumstances beyond our control in the world, and as victims, we need a savior. So these ideas, this thinking originated early in the 20th century when there was a technological revolution then. Now this technology has evolved to the point where it is taking leaps and bounds. It's not a linear progression. We're talking about exponential progression of technology. The thinking is that we need to replace aspects of the human body with computer chips, with wires, with chemicals to augment our natural capacities. So when we talk about transhumanism, it means different things to different people, but there are essentially 3 phases. One of them we're already using openly, and that is a prosthetic phase where we use very specialized kinds of contact lenses, for example, to augment eyesight, or artificial hips, heart replacement, skin replacement. And these things are all good in our lives. People that need them, I'm happy that it's there. The second phase is where we're entering right now, the second and the third, is where the body itself is being replaced with robotics and artificial intelligence. And this is where we enter into the slippery slope. The third phase is the thinking that our consciousness can be reduced to ones and zeros on a computer chip, and that we can live our lives in a digital reality, in a digital universe. And we're going to talk about that more in this webinar today. So I want to be very clear on this. As a scientist, I've seen this all my life. Science and technology typically advance before the morality of how we can apply these things in our lives. And working in the industry, I had this conversation all the time. Scientists would say to me, there are two schools of thought, Steve. They would say, number one, because we have the knowledge to create this technology, it gives us the right to do so. And there's another school of thought that says, whoa, not so fast. Just because we can doesn't mean that we should. So the big question that we're asking ourselves now is, how much of ourselves do we want to give away to the technology? And here's the reason it's important, Steve, because what the science shows is once we begin to replace our natural biology with artificial technology, our capabilities begin to atrophy. Neurons in the brain begin to atrophy. Properties of the blood begin to atrophy. Organs and organ functions begin to atrophy, and we lose the essence of our humanness, including things, emotional components like empathy, sympathy, compassion, and the ability to self-regulate our bodies. So the technology is here to say this conversation is about this question: how much of ourselves do we give away to the technology? We can't answer that until we know who we are. That's what this program is all about.
Gregg, that really sets the table beautifully. So let me come back over to you. Futurist John Nesbitt has said that the greatest breakthroughs of the 21st century won't occur because of technology. They will occur because of an expanding concept of what it means to be human. Can you respond to this?
Absolutely. Such a great question, Steve. What we don't understand, because we constantly look to things outside, is how extraordinary this human body is. We have not tapped the vast majority of the capabilities that we have. What I'm talking about is our capacity to heal, our capacity to create out there in the world. I mean, consider this, Steve. Consider a breastfeeding mother. When her baby gets sick, it's not just that she provides antibodies when the baby is well, but when the baby is sick, her breast milk changes in order to treat that illness. Now, that is artificial intelligence on a grand scale. But think about it also, that so much of our healing happens with thoughts and words. And that's the thing I'm really fascinated by, is the idea that we are actually in control so much of the time of our ability to heal. So before we start looking outside to all of those new things that Gregg talked about, we really have to understand and maximize the extraordinary abilities we have to see beyond our senses, to heal ourselves, to heal the world. We have capacities we haven't even understood yet. So that's really the purpose of this discussion and of our modules, is to really help people understand the magnificence of the human body, the magnificent powers we possess that are better, more extraordinary than really any mechanistic development and technology can ever approximate.
Gosh, yeah, Lynn, so true. Thank you. And there are more and more people that are sharing that we're coming into this age of consciousness that I think is focused on doing exactly what you're talking about, where we're just coming into these new understandings, and we're intentional about it. We're even metaphysical about it. But just coming from the dark ages of Darwinian, Newtonian science that unfortunately has been what our world view, our cultural story has been based on. Well, Bruce, let me come over to you here. So technology, consciousness, and evolution has grown into an iconic theme You train people all over the world to develop their untapped human capacities. Do you believe that we've only scratched the surface of what is possible when we consider our intrinsic human potential without the need for technological enhancements?
Thank you for that very complicated question, my dear friend. Because the fact is, no, we haven't even tapped into who we really are. And to really start off this discussion, I really like to say this: is that the most valid science on this planet is quantum physics. And I say that for a very simple reason, is that theoretically, when quantum physics was proposed, there was a whole bunch of insights and ideas about how the universe works. And nearly 100% of those ideas from 1927 turned out to be valid in our new insight of quantum physics. The most important principle was actually stated back in 1927 by one of the founders of quantum physics, Max Planck. And he wrote back then, the mind is the matrix of all matter. What he meant by that was, in quantum physics, the reality we are experiencing is a consequence of our consciousness. And therefore, we are creating our lives. And in fact, even now in a recent article in Nature, one of the most prestigious scientific journals on the planet, Richard Conn Henry, a quantum physicist from Johns Hopkins, concluded that the universe is immaterial, it's mental and spiritual. Again, reinforcing the idea that our consciousness, our mental activity is what is creating our life experience. Then I look around and I say to people, well, how's that working out for you? Are you creating that heaven on earth that we would all love to experience? And of course, the answer is no. The world is in such great chaos that actually we're facing what is called the sixth mass extinction of life, where our consciousness as we're operating today is actually precipitating our own extinction. So the question is then, if we are creating this with consciousness, then how come all of this chaos is going on? And the answer turns out that while we're creating with consciousness, the brain is an information processor. It is a vast computer, and there are parallels between a computer and human consciousness in this regard. Both of them are operating information processors, the brain, the computer. But the interesting correlation here is simply this. If we go back and I say in the old days, we used to go buy a computer and bring it home and push start and it would boot up. And I say, okay, let's do something. Let's make a drawing. Let's write a spreadsheet or let's create. The answer was, no, you can't do that. And I say, why not? Because first you have to put programs into a computer before you can use that computer. And this is really in the human development. The brain can boot up in the last trimester of pregnancy. It's ready to go, but it can't be used until programs are put in. So the first 7 years of our life is actually when our brain is operating in a state of hypnosis, which in EEG terms is called theta vibration. And I say, why is this relevant? Because the first 7 years of our life, we're in a state of hypnosis where we download the rules, the programs, of how to be a member of a family and how to be a member of a community. After age 7, then we become the creators because consciousness kicks in, self-consciousness. And I go, so what's relevant to that? And I go, well, self-consciousness is the one that wants to manifest heaven on earth. And I go, well, then if we're capable of doing that, still won't explain why we're here. And the answer is simply this. Self-consciousness, the creative part of our mind, can think as well as create. And he goes, so what? I go, thinking is an inside job. I go, so what does that mean? I say, well, if you start to think about something, your self-conscious assessment of the world is not looking out at the world anymore. Thinking is an inside process. And I go, well, what if I'm driving the car and then I'm thinking and I'm not paying attention to what's going on? I go, well, here's the important part. The subconscious has programs. Like I said, most of them were downloaded before age 7. But the subconscious is autopilot. The moment we are thinking, then the character of our life is not controlled by the creative conscious mind. It is now taken over by the subconscious mind, the autopilot. The big issue is only this. 95% of our life, we are thinking. And 95% of our life is not coming from our wishes and desires creative mind. We are actually creating life from the programs that were downloaded in that first 7 years. The Jesuits have told us that for 400 years. Give me a child until it is 7 and I will show you the man. What they were saying very simply this is whatever programs went in before 7 is what we will express 95% of our life. But it's subconscious. It means it's below conscious. And so when we are thinking, we're playing programs and we're not even paying attention. But the programs didn't come from our creativity. They came from what we downloaded from other people. The serious part is up to 60% of the programs we downloaded before age 7 are disempowering, self-sabotaging, and limiting beliefs. And now we find out 95% of our life is coming from that. The important part of this program and working with my dear colleague, Gregg and Lynn, is that all of us have recognized the very serious part that, yes, we are creating this world, but not creating with wishes and desires. The wake-up call is to recognize this. We have been programmed. And when we get out of the program, then we can manifest heaven on earth. And the simple example of that is in the movie The Matrix. Everyone thinks science fiction. I go, no, movie Matrix is documentary. Everyone has been programmed. Well, that's a fact of life. And then in the movie, they say you take the red pill, you get out of the program. I say, well, what happens? And now I just want to close with this because in our lives, most of us have taken that red pill at one time. I said, well, what happens? We got out of the program. I said, then what happened? I said, we created a whole different experience. I said, when was that time we took the red pill? And the answer is when we fell in love. Because when we fell in love, we stopped thinking. We stayed present. And I say, so what? And I say, well, then we're not defaulting to subconscious programs. When we're staying present, we're creating with our conscious creative mind. And I say, and what happened when we fell in love? No matter how much your life was blah, 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 the day you fell in love, 24 hours later, you manifested heaven on earth, the honeymoon. And this is the clearest and most important understanding, and that is once we stay present and stop defaulting to the program, we did manifest heaven on earth. So the insight story that we want to offer in the episodes of this important series from Humanity's team, the emphasis is this: how can we take back control of that creative mind? And instead of living in the chaos that we're living in, all of us collectively manifest the experience of heaven on earth. That is our future. And the chaos we're experiencing right now is the push to say, we better stop doing what we're doing, take back the control, and through that control, manifest heaven on earth for everyone and everything on this planet.
Amen, amen, and amen, Bruce. Yeah, and boy, as we know, when we're reaching for heaven on earth here, but our feet are on the ground. This is a grounded process that we're talking about. Where you stay with us, you'll see what we mean here. There's science to this whole process that we're discussing. So let me come over to Gregg here to talk about these scientific studies that are using brain implants that are going to trial now, and may seem to be, and many also seem to be excited about living near full time in the metaverse. Can you speak to the things that people might want to be mindful of as they look at these things and more that are unfolding in the technology environment?
Absolutely, Steve. Thank you. I just want to build on everything that Lynn and Bruce have said. Bruce, I'm in love with this conversation, so I'm in heaven on earth right now. The best science of the modern world is now revealing a very different way of thinking about us, about the human body, Steve. And what science is now showing is that we literally are a highly advanced, technologically sophisticated, soft technology. Now, when I say soft technology, we're not talking about computer chips and wires and chemicals. We're talking about neurons, cell membranes, and ion potentials moving across cell walls, and the ability to self-regulate all of these functions at will, on demand, in a way that far, far exceeds anything that a computer or computer systems can do today. Computers are fast, and this is absolutely true. The computers are fast, but here's the thing: a computer chip is made of a finite material, silica, that has finite boundaries that cannot be scaled beyond a certain level. Our neurons, we don't know how far we can scale. We don't know what the upper end of our capacities for thinking and memory and cognition and recall and empathy and sympathy and intuition and all of those and more. We don't know the upper end. And this is what Lynn and Bruce are saying. They're saying that with the technology that's coming on board, the threat is that we will relinquish our humanness, the very essence of what makes us human, give it away to the technology before we even know what it is that we're giving away. Now, the answer to your question, and to tie back into my first statement, the best way to hide something is keep it in plain sight. There's a very clever marketing campaign right now, especially targeting young people, that is making some of this technology look very hip and very sexy. And one of the most recent examples is what you just mentioned, Steve. It's the metaverse. The metaverse is a digital reality that is now possible because of blockchain technology. It's a new, relatively new technology. The metaverse is an artificial reality where individuals in this world project themselves as avatars, as mini-me's into the digital world, and they live their lives. Business decisions are made, business mergers and acquisitions happen, real estate is being bought and sold, intimate human relationships are happening, and it's all in this metaverse. The problem is, and the science is very clear, is that when we begin to engage more and more in this artificial reality of the metaverse, more and more of our bodies begin to atrophy. I have to read this. This is because I want you to know this isn't just my opinion. As a scientist, I'm sharing the peer-reviewed science. This is from National Institutes of Health. The discoveries are that neurons are being constantly generated in the hippocampus of the human brain. It's not like we have a set amount. When we don't use those, it's use it or lose it. And this is exactly what they're saying. Most of the cells that are generated in the brain will die unless they are engaged in an effortful learning experience within a week of when they are presented. When young people spend hours and days of their lives in this extraordinary world, they wake up in the morning and they put on a helmet and they have the extraordinary images and the sensations and the colors and the sounds in the digital reality, they are less willing to engage in real human experiences, the emotional exchanges that build their ability to solve problems and social interactions. There are actually new psychological terms are being developed to identify how deeply this is happening right now. A part of this, and this, Steve, this goes directly to your question, a part of what makes this possible is we now have computer chips that can be inserted into the human brain and allow the individual to directly interact with the computer hard drive with no wires, no keyboards, and they're making this look very cool for young people. So for a young person, they say, you mean I can do my gaming without a keyboard? Sweet. You know, who wouldn't want that? Because they have never been taught how precious and how rare and how extraordinary our soft technology is, the power of the human body. So I think what we're doing in this conversation, Steve, we're not telling people to or not to engage. We are giving people a heads up that there is a technological movement that is encouraging us to give ourselves away to the technology. Once we do that, we forever relinquish aspects, very unique aspects, as I mentioned before, empathy, sympathy, compassion, all of these things, they're gone. And once they're gone in one generation, they'll never come back in the next generation. We change as a species. Do we want to give ourselves away to AI and computers in exchange for being logical, for having fast processors, in exchange for the very essence of the capabilities that we love and cherish, the emotions of our humanness? And when we encourage our young people to engage more and more in this artificial world, this is what they're losing. And this is where we stand right now. This is the whole purpose of this conversation, is to alert people that these extraordinary potentials that we're only beginning to understand, we don't want to give them away now. We're just beginning to understand this soft technology, the extraordinary potential in this technology.
Yeah, boy, thank you. Thank you, Greg. And as you can see, there's so much passion here because truly we believe there is nothing more important we could be talking about right now than this topic: technology, consciousness, and evolution. Okay, let me go back to Bruce here. Is there a way, Bruce, for us to take greater control of our health, our life experiences inside our own minds?
Steve, this is one of the most important insights necessary to help us move from where we are today into the future world of heaven on earth. As I mentioned, yes, quantum physics recognizes that consciousness is creating our life experiences. The beautiful part is that biology in recent times has come to the exact same conclusion and actually precipitated a new field of study called epigenetics. And I go, what's relevant about that? And I said, well, all of us have been programmed to some degree that genes control the character of our lives. And since, as far as we know, we didn't pick the genes we came with, we can't change the genes if we don't like the characters. And then we're told that genes turn on and off by themselves. That puts us consciously into a place of being a victim, meaning I can't control my life, my genes control my life. And then all of a sudden we start to look at patterns and blame it on our genetics. The new science of epigenetics changes all that because it recognizes, no, genes are simply blueprints to make the parts of the body called proteins. And I go, significance is this: a gene is a blueprint. I go, so relevance, I say, go into an architect's office and let's say she's working on a blueprint. You look over her shoulder and you say, hey, is your blueprint on or off? She would look at you like, what are you, crazy? The blueprint doesn't turn on and off. I go, well, then how does it work? I say, there's an architect that engages the blueprint. The blueprint itself is not self-actualizing. And I go, this is exactly the same story about genes. Genes do not turn on and off and control who we are. It's our consciousness that is an architect. It is our consciousness that calls up the blueprints, the genes. It is our consciousness as an architect that can modify all of the blueprints. For every gene blueprint to make a protein, based on how you see life, you can create over 3,000 different versions of proteins from the same blueprint based on consciousness. When I say so, relevance is simply this. As quantum physics has been telling us, it's our consciousness that is creating our life experiences, not only our internal one, but our external one. And the new science of epigenetics is actually a complete support of that original belief from 1927. We are manifesting and creating our life experiences. And as Gregg mentioned, one of the most important aspects of this is that our biological mechanism is based on use it or lose it. And I go, why? Because our biological mechanism is the ultimate in efficiency. If we're using something, then biology enhances it. If we stop using, biology will say, then why am I maintaining this? And so use it or lose it applies not just to the muscles as everyone thinks. Use it or lose it applies to every aspect of our biology, from the muscles to the brain. And when we start to rely on AI, artificial intelligence, then we're not using this anymore. And all of a sudden, our functional aspects start to decrease. Human creativity has been decreasing over the last 20 or 30 years because we're not exercising our creative capabilities. Schools are not encouraging thinking anymore. Schools are encouraging reacting. Here's how you react. Here's how you respond. But what about using the creative character? And as Gregg mentioned, if we stop using the creative character, the neurons that provide for that disappear. They are taken away. And as of today, we're asking our students in schools not to use creativity, but to actually study the facts of science and math and engineering and just regurgitate those back and forth. Where's the creativity? We lost it. And now we're going to think of, oh, well, let's be creative with artificial intelligence. I go, artificial intelligence has nothing on the power of our own creativity. consciousness is who and what we are. And the evolution we're facing is not a physical change in the human body. It's a time for us to change our understanding of consciousness. We are not a victim of programs that we receive. We are the masters and creators of those programs. When we take that power back, AI is nothing compared to our great computer. There is no engineering of a computer that can match the consciousness of the human brain. And yet we want to trade it off and say, oh, the technology is better. And I go, no way. It's our consciousness that is creating everything, including the AI. And what we need to do is come back to see how truly powerful we are as creators. Just to close very simply, I say, how about something like walking across hot coals? What do you mean? I go, it's your consciousness that allows an individual to walk across the hot coals without burning themselves. If the person's consciousness doubts they can do this, they get burned instantly. We're not exercising consciousness. We want to put it on the shelf and buy some AI. And I go, AI can't even match what we do. And all of a sudden you start to realize we will lose the wonderful powers of our biology if we trade it off for some technology that was created by somebody's consciousness, but not fully experiencing our consciousness. And this program by humanity's team is fundamental because it says knowledge is power. A more important way, a lack of knowledge is a lack of power. And what Lynn and Gregg and I are here to offer is empowerment, because we have knowledge to offer you that you haven't been programmed with yet. And when you take that knowledge, you become the master of your life and not the victim of circumstances.
Yeah, boy. Man, and you and Gregg have brought in this notion of atrophy, bringing it around and around, which is so important, because it's saying, even if you think this is neat and cool and to do this technology thing, that our capacities are shrinking, atrophy, shrinking. And what we're comparing that to is this reaching up into heaven on earth, this fullness of our capacities. We're increasing like crazy. So this is the contrast we're wanting to bring around here that's so incredibly important in this day and age. So Lynn, let me come back over to you. So can you talk about how our thoughts alone can affect and alter matter itself, including our own bodies and minds?
Absolutely, Steve. Now, one of the problems we have is that we are operating according to an old set of rules. And that is really also the problem with AI. It's just an advancement of the old science. And the old science, Newtonian science and Darwinian science, really boiled down to an understanding of the world as a batch of separate objects, very well-behaved objects, operating according to fixed laws in time and space. And then Darwinian science basically says there isn't enough to go around, so life must proceed through struggle. You know, the famous line, survival of the fittest. So that kind of idea of competitive individualism has seeped into our psyche. It is the leitmotif of our lives. And it is, again, what Bruce and Gregg have been talking about, this sense that we're not good enough as we are. But the new science shows a very different story. That old science is out of date. The new science shows we're inextricably connected. Even our subatomic particles are connected through a quantum energy field. But also, we are connected through our thoughts. Our thoughts are trespassers, essentially. We're beaming out 24/7. New science shows thoughts are not locked inside our brains. Consciousness is not inside our brain. Essentially, the language of our body is not chemistry and electricity alone. It's frequency. So we are energy, as Bruce has been talking about. Consciousness is energy. Life is mental. Our consciousness is everything. And people think, oh, there's not much science about the power of intention. There's an extraordinary amount of science about the power of intention. We've seen the power of the placebo. The placebo works 60 to 70% of the time. There's an enormous body of evidence about the placebo effect. And what that boils down to is our consciousness, our mind is affecting our body. And we see this all the time. But here's the other thing, Steve, that's so extraordinary that I talk about in my modules is aside from the power of thought, we have the power to see beyond our senses. We have the power to go back and forward in time. We have the power to forecast things. We have the power to heal. Now, aside from all of those studies in the lab, I've done 40 intention experiments where I've worked with scientists around the world and invited my audience, my readers around the world, to come on at a designated time and send intention to a particular thing. We have had of those 40, 35 have shown measurable, positive, mostly significant effects. Everything from making seeds to grow faster, to purifying water with our thoughts, to lowering violence in war-torn areas. And here's the other thing about it. Doing those kinds of intentional things in groups, whether it is the intention experiments or small groups of 8, like I talk about in my program, we find that there is an effect on the senders as well as the recipients. And we see this all the time in small groups too. There is a communal effect. And I want to just bring that round to the final comment about how things are going to atrophy. The science shows that we were meant to live in community. We live longer, happier, healthier lives if we do things for other people. We need to belong probably more than we need to eat or have water. And so one of the big problems of AI and the metaverse is it increases isolation. It increases the kind of human connection and belonging that is essential to our being. So that's probably the most extraordinary thing of all about us. When we're in community, amazing miracles happen.
Yeah, boy, beautiful. And there's so much that you covered there, but this aspect of that you often share is that the senders are experiencing healing with the receivers, which is so awesome. I mean, isn't this beautiful? The community works this way. We're coming together for a common purpose and intention involving a receiver, and we're a sender. And guess what? We participate in the healing and the upside. I mean, so beautiful. Thank you, Len. So I want to thank you, Bruce, Len, and Gregg. Your extensive research and the work you've done training people all over the world in human capacity development has obviously led to tremendous insights and wisdom that you've shared with us today. I'm sure it will be invaluable as we continue our evolutionary journey as humans toward the next level of what is possible for us.
So I just want to reiterate what we're saying. None of us are saying that technology is good, bad, right, or wrong. Technology is with us. It's not going away. The question is the role that we invite it or the role that we allow it to play in our lives. Discovering how we can allow technology to serve us rather than allowing it to steal from us the very cherished characteristics that make us human, our uniqueness of the things that we've talked about: emotion, sympathy, empathy, compassion. So I'm excited because in this program, Technology, Consciousness, and Evolution, what we're doing, each of us, through our own lifetime of research, we have over 120 years of collective experience in this course, Steve, in our own unique ways and where the overlap is. We each are sharing, number one, the information that gives us the reason to think differently. And this is really where our healing and our trust begins, in our humanness, because we are all programmed, we are all indoctrinated into this thinking that we are powerless victims and that we need something outside of us. So when we share the science, peer-reviewed science, we share the research, that's the foundation to shift the thinking. And then in addition to that, the kinds of experiences or the techniques that help us to make those shifts in our lives. I know we each have done this in our modules in the way that we know best. So for my module specifically, I'm sharing each module has a scientific principle and then the way to apply that. in our lives, whether it's a deepening awareness or whether it is actually a process to create coherence between the organs of the human body, or to awaken deep states of intuition, cognition, super memory, super learning, super resilience. But all of those things, once we go through this program, it is both the solid foundation of a new awareness and then the techniques that allow us to bring that awareness into our lives and in the lives of our families, our communities, and our loved ones in a healthy way and in a meaningful way. So perhaps, Steve, for the first time, we begin exploring what it means to be human on these very, very deep levels.
Yes, boy, and so important collectively, and then getting down into these actual untapped potentials and how we can climb that ladder into the fullness of our untapped potentials and capacities. Thank you for getting that discussion started here, Gregg. And so let's go inside this program now to tell you a little bit more about it. As you can see, there are 24 original video modules. There are 3 brand new video modules, and then there are 3 mentoring sessions. There's actually a lot more, but that gets this conversation started. So as we go down inside of this masterclass, Technology, Consciousness, and Evolution, the first 9 modules are with Gregg Braden. And Gregg, do you want to just talk briefly about your 9 modules?
Sure, Steve. Well, when we put this program together, we knew from our scientific background where this trend was headed. We had no idea it would move as quickly as it has, or that it would be where it is now with the metaverse and things like that. So these first 8 modules are laying the foundation that I just described. Each module describes a scientific principle, the battle for our story. There is a battle for who we are, what our capabilities and what our potentials are. It's playing out in the mainstream media, in our classrooms and textbooks. And as we develop an awareness of that, we can become more aware of how we are buying in to the false assumptions and the obsolete beliefs of who we are. And all the other modules then build upon this about the transhumanism that is with us. It's not going away. The question is, how much of ourselves do we want to merge with machines and AI? The bottom line, Steve, for me in all of this is the better we know ourselves, the less dependent we become on the external technology, and the more we can allow that technology to serve us and help us become the best version of ourselves rather than enslaving us and limiting our uniquely human potentials. So this is why I've organized all of these modules in the way that I have. The Inconvenient Discovery, module number 5, tells us that the human genome experiment and the Genome Project actually began to reveal to the scientific community everything we're talking about here now, because the genome doesn't work the way they thought it would work. And it opened the door to the question, if it's not what we thought it was, then what is it? Literally, module number 6, we are the technology we've been waiting for. Every cell in our body functions as resistors, capacitors. We transmit light, we receive light. And all of these things we self-regulate through thought, feeling, emotion, breath, focus, consciousness, and the biofields, programming them. This is what Lynn has just been talking about, how we use our soft technology to access and experience in the field. We are the field. So it's not like we have to connect with the field, it's how we engage with the field in our everyday lives. And then the power of language to do this. But Steve, when we put this together originally, we didn't know where things were going. The new module, module number 9, expands upon where we are right now. The metaverse, how it works, what it's doing to our bodies, what it's doing to our minds, what it's doing to our children. And again, not to make it go away, but to allow it to serve us in a healthy way. And it's up for everybody right now. So I know that was very quick. I want to honor our time here today, but this gives people a sense. Each of these modules has a technique, an application at the end when you finish that module, so you can take this idea and either apply it in your body or apply it in your life with your family and your community in a healthy way. So I'm going to stop there, Steve, because I know we have a lot more to go through.
Okay, nice. Yeah, thank you for taking us through that, Gregg. Beautiful. And Bruce, so do you want to very briefly describe your 9 modules then that follow?
I would love to briefly describe it, Steve, but thankfully the modules go very much deeper than I can say right now. But one of the modules emphasizes simply this: how do we get here? Why is life the way it is today? Is this an accident or what? And the answer is no. What we start to recognize a very simple fact that over history, civilization has gone through many different changes and experiencing a different form of civilization. I say, well, first of all, what is a civilization based on? And the answer turns out it's based on the answers to what are called the perennial questions. Perennial questions have been asked for over 10,000 years by humans, and they include three simple questions. How did we get here? Why are we here? And most importantly, now that we're here, how do we make the best of it? It turns out that a civilization's character is based on who provides the answers to those questions. And so over time, different answers have come up, and every time different answers to the questions come up, civilization changes. This is not the first civilization that's been here and one that is now in a downhill movement. Let's just very briefly state the civilizations. 10,000 years ago, we were here in a civilization called animism. And this is a civilization where the thought leaders in that civilization told us that we were living in a garden and that we're here to take care of that garden. And that's sort of like the Native Americans or the Aboriginals or the Druids. And I say, fine, that they came up with those answers. But at some point, civilization changed because then they started to recognize, well, there are forces that are controlling our life experiences, and then we assign gods to them. Well, this is a period where animism ends and polytheism takes over because now we have multiple gods, gods of the of plants, gods of water, et cetera, and we attribute all the actions to these gods. The next evolution said, wait a minute, there's not that many different gods. There's only one God, that's monotheism. And the answers to the questions are very profound. It said, how do we get here? Well, the first answer was divine intervention. Why are we here? Well, according to monotheism practice, we're here to live out plays of morality to see if we're worthy enough to go to heaven after we pass on. And then they say, how do you make the best of it in that monotheistic culture? And the answer is follow the laws and rules of the Bible. However, that civilization ended when Charles Darwin came up and said, wait a minute, we didn't get here through divine intervention. We got here through an evolutionary process changing our genetics. Why are we here? Well, that was a big problem because according to Darwinian theory, evolution was just a result of accidental mutations. And I say, well, if the mutations were accidental, then there's no purpose for us being here. And exactly that was the conclusion of science. But then science did offer us how do we make the best of it? And that is the struggle for survival. As Lynn mentioned earlier, that we're here struggling to survive, and that's why we're fighting all the time. Well, the answers to those questions have recently changed. No, we got here through mutations, but they were an accident. They were adaptive mutations. Organisms keep adapting to an environment. Why are we here is actually to bring balance and harmony. That goes back to the original animists. Yes, the planet is a garden, and look what we have done to it without our awareness. We are precipitating our own mass extinction at this moment because of our undermining of the web of life. And then how do we make the best of it? And Lynn also brought this up, and that was we start to live in harmony and community, not as individuals separated from each other. And if we look at the world today, it's kind of interesting as we're moving from a Darwinian world into a new holistic world that the powers to be don't want us to go there. They're enforcing separation, distance, keep away from each other and all that. And I go, this is anti-evolution. And if we understand this, then we could say, wait, that philosophy is actually taking us away, that we need to move into the future in a different way. Significance is the modules that are offered here tell the story of evolution, but then also go to the point of how and why we end up with the world the way it is, but more importantly, how we can create the world that is in the one in front of us. And the last module that's just been added, which I really appreciate, actually provides the mechanisms of understanding how we got programmed to create the world by other people's beliefs and how we can change those programs to re-empower ourselves to manifest what evolution was all about, living in a garden. And the most important part about a garden is not a battleground. A garden is the height of cooperativity. And this is what we need to learn right now so we can survive into the future. Come together, change the programming that has taken us off the track, and build a better world. And between Gregg's work and Lynn's work and my work, this is what all these modules come together. How can we re-empower ourselves and manifest heaven on earth? And I'm so excited because the population is currently in that process of leaving the old behind and moving into a sustainable future.
Okay, beautiful, boy, and so important. We are, and so viewers, of course, we're just skimming the surface here. There's so much more. We want to just honor your time, not go much more than an hour, but do invite you to come back and really read thoughtfully this program page that covers the fullness of this 8-week masterclass. Lynn McTaggart then has got the final 9 modules. Lynn, do you want to very briefly talk about your modules?
Sure. So first I go through a primer on quantum physics and how it differs, how our real story, our new story differs from the old one, that our consciousness is not locked inside our brain, that our understanding of life does not end with our senses, and that to affect something, you don't have to do something physical to it. You don't have to freeze it, drop it, burn it, or give it a good swift kick. And the new science demonstrates that we are connected not only with each other, not only with the rest of the world, but intergalactically. You have to think of us as an intergalactic superorganism. I also go into a lot of the new biology, building on what Bruce has about evolution and his brilliant epigenetics. I look at some of the aspects of mirror neurons, the fact that which demonstrate that if we see someone with having a thought or having an emotion or doing something physical, the very same neurons in us fire as if we were doing it too. I look at the fact that we are sending out tiny currents of light, and that light is being sent back synchronicitously from other people. So thus, demonstrating that our thoughts are not locked inside our skulls. They are essentially a very well-ordered light. I look at time and space. The new science shows that we are not creatures of time, that space is not really anything more than one great big here, and time, nothing more than one great big now, that we can access information in the past and the future. I look at our brains as a receiving mechanism, sending and receiving. And I look at so much of the evidence about the power of intention, as I mentioned earlier, and that we entrain with other people when we send them a loving thought. I also want people to understand about the power of community. So I go into a great deal of the science demonstrating that we were born to belong, we were born to be fair, we were born to connect. And in my new 9th module, I go into far more about thoughts and words and how they heal you and how to use them. What I'm trying to help people understand is the new science reveals that we are far more incredible than we've ever thought we were before, and how we can maximize that with thoughts and words and community to live a more miraculous life than any AI can offer.